Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and, I'm probably gonna get some poo for it. I'm gonna get some motherfuckers who will bring up the Switch 2 again. I have Metal Gear Solid Delta, Metal Gear Triangle Snake Eater, right? Now, I made a video a couple days ago where I said it is kind of unacceptable that Konami has released a video game with some pretty serious performance problems. And I actually stand by that 100% because after playing this, I'll tell you right now, those performance problems are actually way worse. Because what if I told you the actual game itself is worth the price of admission? If the game ran at a consistent 60 FPS, I might say this is the best fucking way to play Metal Gear Solid 3, hands down. Now, what do I mean by that? I gotta get the actual negatives out of the way, okay? I gotta get the negatives out so we can just get to the good stuff. So first off, we looked at it a couple days ago. Like, Metal Gear Solid 3 is a game that on the latest and greatest PlayStation 5 runs between like 30 to 60 FPS. Now, you might not think this is a big deal, but to give you an idea, it is probably some of the most insane levels of judder you'll have to deal with. Now, to analyze just quickly to show you what I'm talking about here, I use a tool known as Teardrop, which isn't perfect, and I use the capture from my PlayStation 5 just to show you what the fluctuations kind of look like. So very early on in the game, this is like about the time you get into Virtuous Mission, Operation Snake Eater, and inside here you have to actually take on 5 or 6 guys from the GRU unit that have surrounded you. Now, this isn't something that I did in sort of an action-heavy style. I actually played through this game mostly stealth, as I usually do, at least the first playthrough of a Metal Gear game. So there weren't any wacky explosions. Now, if you look carefully at this frame rate graph, you can see that the game struggles to maintain 60 frames per second. In fact, it does hover between 40 to 60, usually around that 50 FPS mark. And you might be like, well, that's probably decent, Muda. I mean, what are you complaining about? The problem with this is that obviously if you don't have a VRR display, and even with a VRR display, sometimes the performance can go so low that you will feel the judder. It's annoying when you go from playing Metal Gear Solid 5 at a constant 60 frames per second, not a drop there, and then you immediately jump over here. First off, I want to just say this too. This game is not pretty enough to warrant this performance issue. Don't get me wrong, the game looks nice, the game has decent texture work to it, sometimes it can be desired, but for this video, dude, I decided to go back and fire up Metal Gear Solid 4 in an emulator, of course, and I bumped that up to 1080p, and I'll be completely real with you, I think that gaming has reached this plateau where visually, yeah, certain new engine techniques can be found. We've got things like ray tracing, the lighting is better, you tend to have better looking textures, but looking at a game that is goddamn old at this point, PlayStation, at this point running on a retro system, I'll say that, honestly, I would have preferred the visuals to run at a rock-solid 60 frames, and even if the textures didn't look, sharp in every capacity, or something wasn't, 100% perfect, I would have accepted it at the performance, just being at that constant 60, maybe even more. Now, the thing about it, too, is that obviously the game does look good, it looks fine, but I think that there's a lot left to be desired, right? First off, the actual game is split up into zones, just like the original PS2 title, which I don't understand why that had to be the case. I think maybe it's because deep down there might be a version of the PS2 game still running here, but literally everything is sort of like, spaced out the same. So these small locations, which they had to be small because they were running on the PS2 at the time, seem like they should be a cakewalk for the PlayStation 5. But really they aren't. The enemies, no matter what you do, you will come across constant performance problems, and this has not been addressed so far. Even with the patches, and I've played with the patches, there are moments in this game where looking at an explosion happen in front of you will freeze the PlayStation ever so slightly. It is janky feeling. There was one point towards the end of the game where killing an enemy or two just froze the entire game outright. This is unacceptable. This is stuff that honestly should have been ironed out for a full-price video game release. Now me, I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan, okay? I love Metal Gear. So I went to Bootman Bill, alright, some real ex-haunted gaming shit right here, found me a copy of this game. Now, of course, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, I played a little bit of that 1.0 version. I played a little bit of the update. The performance problems are there.
it's not a good feeling game in some cases. Anytime there's actual combat on the screen, it's not going to feel 100% perfect. So anyways, that's pretty much the negative side of it. If that was addressed, if honestly Konami delayed this game a little bit and just ironed out all the issues, this might be, in my opinion, the best way to play Metal Gear Solid 3. So Metal Gear Solid Delta, I don't know what the triangle is all about at this point. This is effectively Snake Eater. Now, I'm going to say why this is a great game and why the reviews have been so good. This is just Metal Gear Solid 3. There is no way you can fuck up Metal Gear Solid 3. To give you an idea, imagine Ubisoft in its current state. If you told them to remake Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, another great stealth game of all time, there is no conceivable fucking way even modern day Ubisoft could fuck up Chaos Theory. I don't care if they stick in a battle pass. I don't care if they stick in a battle royale. I don't care if they stick the game up my ass. It's going to be a great game. That's how good Metal Gear Solid 3 actually is. So at the core of it, this is a full-ass remake. And I'm saying it is a 1-to-1 remake. To give you an idea of how 1-to-1 this is, I swear to God, I'm pretty sure the developers grid mapped every single tree, blade of grass, log, enemy position, item position onto a grid, mapped it directly to the original PS2. It's actually fucking impossible to find any slight difference between the original PlayStation 2 game and the actual, remake. Because every single thing that I've seen, every cave entrance, every single it looks literally like the original PlayStation 2 layout, just upscaled with better graphics. Now, speaking of the graphics, one of the issues with this is obviously the Unreal Engine 5 problem. And one of the issues that comes out of it is obviously, if you're looking at this footage, there's some pretty bad ghosting. And if you notice it once, you're going to constantly notice it throughout the entire game. The texture work leaves a lot to be desired. Anytime you stick up close to a wall, which you're going to do in a stealth game, by the way, you will notice that the 4K textures don't exactly look 100% perfect. And these are things that, obviously, if you're going to upgrade the graphics and the game is going to run in a juddery mess, it better at least look goddamn amazing. Now, visually, I think the lighting is fine. I think a lot of the stuff pretty much holds up. There are multiple sort of color filters in the game. There's like a legacy mode, which adds sort of this green tint that you would have seen in the original PS2. There's action movie mode, which is slightly even more green tintier. And then just for shits and giggles, there's things like nostalgia, which makes it look like you're tripping on fucking mushrooms through the entire experience, which thankfully in the game you kind of can, because realistically, when you go to the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 3, that's where this game is peak. Now again, I'm not going to complain about Metal Gear Solid 3. For me, Metal Gear is one of my favorite franchises, and while 3 isn't my personal favorite is actually Metal Gear Solid 2. Metal Gear Solid 3 is one of the best games of all time. You know, when I say, 2 was better, it's kind of like saying, I prefer foie gras to beluga caviar, or lobster to so on, whatever luxury item. They're all just good experiences to have, you know what I mean? They're all just good games. Now, Metal Gear Solid 3's claim to fame is the whole survival aspect, which this game pretty much keeps down to a T. It was great 20 years ago when I played it on the actual original PS2, and it's amazing now. The actual good part about the graphics, though, is that because everything is, a lot more detailed, there are things that kind of blend into the background, which actually adds a little bit of difficulty to the entire game. And I think that's something that's worth mentioning. The graphics do actually make the jungle look a lot more dense and detailed, as they should. And that makes things like claymores, for instance, stick a little bit it makes it blend a little bit into the background. And there's enemies that are a little bit harder to tell as opposed to playing on the PlayStation 2 where it was detailed, but it still obviously wasn't detailed enough to hide moving characters that you would have found in the original game if you looked close enough. Now, of course, the thing about this game that really kind of hits me a lot is obviously the one-to-one nature is so one-to-one that I almost felt that I was about to experience some crazy out-of-body shit at some point. I was actually trying to look for something different the entire time, but no, it literally just is the original PlayStation 2 game with a fresh coat of paint. And that's actually kind of depressing in some ways, because I have actually had a lot of fun playing a 20-year-old PlayStation 2 game with a fresh coat of paint. Now, there's two modes of play here. There's legacy style, so if you're somebody that just loves the original fucking game a lot, like the original play style of Snake Eater, you can play it with the original camera and everything. The only difference is you can't just like switch the camera to like third person at any moment like you can with the HD collection or like Subsistence. I don't know why they didn't bring that back, but I guess it is what it is. The new style is what I played for this video because obviously it's the new style. I might as well try it because I just played MGS3 like a few months ago with the original camera layout. Why not try something new? So there's a couple quality of life fixes to this. Some of them are actually not that great. One of them that's pretty cool is the camouflage system. So instead of always opening up the menu, you could bring up the quick camouflage map by holding the up button and just like switching to like a camouflage right there on the fly. There's also ways for you to access the codec a little quicker, you know, access items and weapons and things. There's some quality of life stuff that actually works. There's stuff that drove me insane. For instance, one quality of life feature that I fucking absolutely despised was the sticking to the wall feature. Now in Metal Gear, this is a pretty important feature, okay? Hugging a wall is a pretty goddamn important part of a stealth action experience. The problem with this game is they actually use this sort of like quasi Metal Gear Solid 5 mechanic where you walk up to a wall and you're supposed to dynamically like automatically lock to it. It doesn't work all the time. It actually fucking is so finicky that I've been caught in the game and have lost like save progress because the game just keeps like, it's just so finicky to stick to a wall that I keep getting caught in the process of it. It's actually the one annoying part of the experience. Now, when you start the game off, there's a couple new options, so you can pick which Metal Gear you love, and it usually gives you some, like, you know, different camouflages each run. But, yeah, there was, like, new options for the introduction of the game. And when it comes to all of the other side content, the reason why I say this is actually the best version of Metal Gear Solid 3 is that it actually has a lot of content that was removed, and I had no idea that it was going to have that. For instance, Snake versus Monkey, the Ape Escape minigame, that's in the actual, like, you know, Delta collection. They removed that from the HD collection, if you don't remember. So when the HD collection came out, which had MGS3, MGS2, and Peace Walker, and then that also got bundled into the Master Collection, and they released that on the Xbox and then PC and everything, it removed a lot of the content from MGS3. So you lost the Ape Escape minigame, which is entirely back in this, and it actually has some more bonuses. But then one thing that blew my mind was, ladies and gentlemen, they have a Guy Savage Delta game. For anybody that doesn't remember this is like the one removed feature from the original PS2 release. So basically the idea is like at some point in the game, you're captured and you're in prison in traditional Metal Gear fashion. And when you go to sleep by saving the game and turning off your system, the next time you fire up your system, you're actually greeted with this like kind of like spooky, like a hack and slash game. It's supposed to be a version of Snake's Nightmare. So in this game, they actually turned it into its own separate game that you unlock after beating the actual main campaign, which I thought was pretty fucking cool to see. Now, the other thing about it, too, is obviously with the new gameplay style, there's, you know, movement that is over the shoulder. You get the crouch walk. It kind of has the gameplay style of Metal Gear Solid 4 and 5, with the exception of, like, sprinting, for instance. Because if you could sprint in this game, you would be able to finish it probably in half the runtime that I was able to do. Now, because this is a one-to-one game, the problem is, obviously, for like a fan of the series like me, if you've played Metal Gear Solid 3 at all, you're not going to get anything new out of this. So if you're cool with that, awesome. But, you know, if you ever played like other remakes like Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4, those remakes kind of made their own game along the way, which is something that I kind of wish they did with MGS3, like maybe expand on certain locations, you know, maybe change things. I'm not asking you to change the core story, but like definitely add on to the game a little bit. Not in the case of Silent Hill 2, where you're just doubling the length to double the length, but maybe change things around. For instance, this is so one-to-one that the levels are literally split up the same way. I'm not joking when I say the entire layout is the same. In fact, it was so similar that I almost wish it had a feature that the Halo remakes do, where in Halo 1 and 2, you can like hit one button and change from like the original graphics to the new graphics. I think it would have been sick if they provided like the original PS2 graphics on top of the actual original, so you can kind of like see what the original game looked like. And then, of course, like the remake. Now, obviously, if you have the Master Collection or the HD Collection, or like, at this point, bro, your grandmother's pacemaker could fucking emulate the original Snake Eater. You can still experience the original game, and actually I highly recommend you do, just so you can kind of see what the original looked like and the new game. Because this is such a one-to-one game that all the cutscenes, literally everything, I think every single animation is mapped one-to-one with the original game. It's so fucking uncannily close, it's wild. And it makes me appreciate the original PlayStation 2 game a little bit more, because for a game that came out, back in 2004, 2005? The original Snake Eater, man, bro, it had to be one of the most technically impressive games, and probably one of the most cinematically impressive games. If it's one thing about the Metal Gear franchise, is these games are basically fucking walking pieces. These are exact reason why you could believe gaming is an art form. You know, Hideo Kojima and his team, when they were making the original Metal Gear Solid, they basically created a game that set itself apart from every other PlayStation game. They were making a game that was cinematically amazing, a game that had voice acting that didn't sound like total dog shit, and of course, a pretty amazing addictive gameplay loop that kept people addicted. And that DNA stretched all the way through the entire franchise. Now, the one thing about the visuals here is obviously I can't not talk about that performance even more. I honestly think this game looks good, but the more I played it, the more I kind of realized that, you know, I wish I could have seen this maybe underneath the Fox engine. And I saw a video of some guy like putting the ending of Metal Gear Solid 3 in the Fox engine, and it looked pretty awesome. Visually, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I think games like Metal Gear Solid 4 actually beat out the visual style of this game a little bit more. And that was a PS3 title. So for me, it's not that I'm opposed to the visuals of Delta. It's just like, I feel the performance is the only problem. And it makes it difficult for me to recommend that you buy this game day one. As much as I wish people bought this game, because obviously I'm a Metal Gear fan. If you buy this, that means Konami has a financial incentive to keep making more Metal Gear games. Hopefully they could remake maybe the original Metal Gear Solid. Maybe they could make an entirely new Metal Gear game and touch upon a portion of the story that we haven't seen yet. I wish they would do that. I wish they would attempt it. But honestly, the game that they made here, as great as this version of Metal Gear Solid 3 is, it could have done with a delay, and they could have addressed those technical issues. Because honestly, if it wasn't for the frame rate problems and the stuttering and the freezing at times, this would be the perfect replacement to the original Metal Gear Solid 3. In fact, honestly, if I'm going to ever play Metal Gear Solid 3, it probably would be the Metal Gear Solid Delta version, just because it's literally the exact same PlayStation 2 game, with those quality of life upgrades, and the fact that they actually restored some of that original content is pretty impressive. Now, again, I wasn't really looking forward to replaying Metal Gear Solid 3 in the eyes of just a PS2 game. The one thing that I'm actually really looking forward to with this game, and one of the big reasons for me getting it, was Metal Gear Online. Now, I missed out on the original Online pretty heavily. Like, I really got into it around MGS4. So this game is supposed to have Metal Gear Online. It's supposed to release at some point, probably after the game comes out. And I'm looking forward to that. I want to give it a try. And I hope Konami actually keeps the server somewhat active, because Metal Gear Online tends to be active for like 48 hours after release and then immediately starts cratering off. So yeah, ultimately, look, at the end, Metal Gear Solid Delta, is it worth it? I would say after a patch, it's probably worth the price of admission. After a frame rate fix, it's probably worth full cost. Simply because if you've never played the original Metal Gear Solid 3, this game will blow you away. It's one of the best stealth action games to ever exist. And if you're a fan like me that's played Metal Gear Solid 3 probably more times than you want to admit, it's still not a bad version. You know, it's still probably the best way for you to replay Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you can't play the original release. I mean, the Master Collection has been updated pretty well enough for people to play it. Or again, you can always just emulate the original, and you're not missing out much. Because again, this is literally just the original game with that Unreal Engine 5 face paint. And if that Unreal Engine 5 face paint was just optimized to begin with, would have been an easy buy. There's a reason why I think the ratings for this are so high. It's because literally you cannot have screwed up Metal Gear Solid 3. I mean, it's just almost impossible. That game is literally fucking perfect in almost every way. It's one of the best stealth action games to ever exist. If Konami had found a way to destroy Metal Gear Solid 3, then holy shit, boys, I think we are in the end times. But yeah, I kind of wanted to yap about it because honestly, I'm a Metal Gear fan, and you know, I feel like I can at least give some actual, you know, assessment of it, given my affinity with the franchise. I've played a shit ton of this franchise. I love these games. And hopefully, if you're getting into Metal Gear Solid, what's kind of weird is they remade the third game, which is basically a prequel to the entire series. But I feel like if you're gonna get this game, especially as a new person, and you know, maybe for new gamers, the new control scheme is like the only way for them to enjoy it because, you know, let's be honest, okay? The original PlayStation 2 games might be a little bit too archaic for some individuals. I can agree with that. But obviously, if they're going to remake this, they might have to start remake the original, like, Metal Gear Solid, because if you find 3 archaic, you're going to find 1 to be really annoying. And I really do think that if you play 3, you should absolutely be playing the original Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, because, again, this is one of the best stories in gaming, and it's just weird that they picked the third game, which is a prequel, but you still kind of need some context from the original 2, like, Solid games. And I feel like if this game maybe had an in-game codex, which it doesn't, it actually has the original manual for Metal Gear Solid 3, which I thought was pretty cool. That could help. I mean, just bundle the database app for MGS4 into this. Let people just read the wiki entries about all the fucking factions and everything. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. It's somewhat depressing that one of the games that I enjoyed this year was literally just a PlayStation 2 title with better graphics. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.